Welcome to Lemonade Learning, a refreshing look at learning today. We serve up high-impact practical strategies alongside honest and energizing stories to help educators.
Make the most of your moments, lead and learn with purpose, and craft lifetime lemonade from the sweets and sours of education. Join us for a glass.
Hey everybody, it's Bree.
And Lainey, welcome to the Lemonade Stand, where we have a very special guest coming from the record store right next door. That's what I'm going to say, right? So I am super excited. Bree and I have been looking forward to this. We have just an amazing person. I'm just going to start with that. Someone who just brightens my day every time I talk to him. He's a day maker. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to steal that from him. Award-winning principal, author, podcaster. I could go on and on, but I want to get him in here as quickly as possible. So welcome, Sean Gaillard. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for being here.
Lainey, thank you so much, Bree. Thank you guys so much. I love how this kind of visualization of lemonade learning, and we're at a lemonade stand and it's summertime. And then I'm usually in a record store. So we're like, I'm like coming over for a lemonade break. So it's quite refreshing.
It's perfect. Well, speaking of refreshing, we always start with the sweet and sour. That's how we get our lemonade. And so we'd love to hear what's going on with you. This is August when we're recording. I think it's August when we're going to release. We'll get this out as soon as we can. So what's the sweet and sour in your world right now?
So I will say that as a principal in August, and for any principal or aspiring principal or AP or whomever, we are in this kind of constant state of panic and constant state of chaos, because there are all these kind of what I'll call MacGyver moments, if y'all, and I'm dating myself a little bit here, but MacGyver was the guy that would escape out of some cell with a Milky Way bar and a paper clip, and build some sort of tunnel or bomb or whatever. So principals, we have all these MacGyver moments, these kind of unexpected, impossible things that happen. And so the sweet and sour of that is we get through them, right? And we do our best to lean in and do the gig and do the job. But sometimes, and they tell you this in principal school, like the principal's the loneliest job in the building. There's no other principal in the building. You're the Lone Ranger. You're the solo act. It's you. And sometimes it's hard, when you get into those MacGyver moments. So for example, if a teacher resigns, or if your admin team is so great that they get promoted and you gotta get a new admin team in, and all of those kind of nuts and bolts things. It's sometimes, we get into those, I'm the Lone Ranger. Nobody understands. I'm alone. Nobody knows what I'm going through, because again, it can be on occasion an isolating gig. It can be a lonely gig. And sometimes you get in your feelings and you get in your own element of, man, I'm not going to make this. You put on sad Frank Sinatra music or some real, just kind of slow, mellow Johnny Cash, and not that I've ever done that, but
this is very detailed. I mean, it does not seem like you've never done this before yet.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from, but yeah, that can be a sour moment, and so the important thing is to remember that you're not alone. You're not the only one that has had catastrophes and MacGyver moments. And so what I tend to do is when I have those kind of moments, I kind of have to like pull myself up by the scruff of my neck and go, no, Sean, you're not alone. You've got other bandmates, you've got other principals and leaders around you, whether it's in your PLN or whether they are a phone call or text away. And you've got to tap into that. You've got to reach out and take that courageous step and go, hey, listen, I'm having a moment. What am I going to do? And so I think, again, that message is really directed for the principals out there, because I know what you all are going through right now. And August, it's a time of great joy, but it can also be a time of great frustration. So like today, like this moment, being in this podcast, I maximize that. I'm grateful to be, with you both. I'm grateful that I've had, you know, other collaborations and other experiences with you both, you know. So, and I know that if I'm up against the wall, I know that I can reach out to you two and go, hey, listen, help me out with this, or can I vent here for a second? So I would really encourage for principals, for their own well-being, to do that. And if you need a bald-headed principal in North Carolina, I can be that person too. I'm happy to be that thought partner.
I think that's really important. Bree, I want to hear what your thoughts are, but I will just say really quickly that, you know, Bree and I spend a lot of time traveling around and working with different schools, and, you know, we're working closely with principals, and the principals I've encountered over the last week or two, I've kind of seen it on them. Like I like the minute I come in contact with them, I can feel the weight of the world on their shoulders because, you know, I had a teacher resign today, and it's like you said, like you understand they've had enough, and this is just what they have to do for their own well-being. But that really makes it a challenge to, okay, how are we going to get this going? So I really love how you point out that even if you're maybe the person that feels isolated in the building, that there are other ways to connect, and that you can, you know, have that PLN, you can reach out to other people. And I feel like that's one way that I've really grown in the last year and a half, is I have reached beyond my physical community and really reached out to my online community, my professional learning network. So I really appreciate that. What do you think, Bree?
I love that. I think I have this right, that aren't your girls headed to school, to college, right? So the first thing that was really settling in my mind when you were talking about all of this is from a parent perspective as well, and how that principal role kind of also mirrors what it's like as a parent, right? Because you're in charge, right? Like you're supposed to be the grown-up who's there to like handle these things. And for all measures intended, our kiddos are constantly throwing some different things at us every now and then, and we're not really sure how it's going to always work out. You know, sometimes we have to lean into things that we weren't prepared for, or that you know, we see it going a direction that we really don't want it to go, but we know for the you know, for the good of the whole, it you know, that might be a learning moment that needs to happen, or whatever that case may be. And you know, it's funny to me because that was like, for our longtime listeners out there, you might remember that was kind of a part where Lainey and I connected to even come into limited learning, was, you know, that like we felt so isolated and looked to others of like, okay, I don't know how to do this. Like, how can I, you know, come out through that? And as you were talking, I think that as a mom, I think that that's something that really resonates with me, of that, like, there are times, and especially like right now when things are coming into, you know, like it is that back to school time. It's that beginning of a new year, all of that. So I think it's just that remembering that even though you feel very much like you're the only one who's dealing with this in that very moment, you're not. Like there's
Yes.
someone else out there who is dealing with a similar situation, or has dealt with a similar situation, that if you just pause in the moment and reach out to them and say like, hey, not saying that I don't need you to tell me what to do, but I need you to help me like think this through. Right.
No, I love the analogy of, and the connection you made. I'll do a little Chris Tivani texter reader connection stuff. That's a plug. We should get some free books. But that whole text to self connection that you just kind of made there, you know, the principal gig, there is something there is something parental about it. There is something maternal about it. And it's important, you know, just as those unexpected things that our own kids, and we're all parents, that you know, man, we don't want to deal with, or we don't want to have happen. We still have to respond to it, right? You know, you still got to get your son's school supplies, right? You can't leave them hanging, you know.
Well,
but
and for you too, because your kiddos are going to college, and so as heartbreaking as it is, right? Like, oh, my babies are leaving, but at the same time, like, for such a time as this, you've prepared them, right? Like you've thought about this for so long. And it reminds me so much of you saying your rock star crew that you've surrounded yourself with did so well that now they're flying to a new nest, right? And you're like, oh.
Yeah, oh, don't leave me. No, you nailed it. It's like a double. And I was explaining this to some colleagues the other day, how, and it kind of hit me at a real powerful moment where I realized I have two empty nests happening at the same time. So I have the empty nest of my admin team, and again, I adore them. They are amazing, and part of my gig as principal is to coach up and to give whatever professional learning experiences that I can, because I like to surround my folks, or surround me rather, with the Beatles. I like to surround all of us with rock stars. And at some point, as much as I love my band and I love the folks that I get to collaborate with, at some point, they got to move on. I mean, I did. I'm not still in the same school that I started in. I'm not even in the same school that I started as a principal or an assistant principal. And the same thing for my daughters, and I have twin daughters. So, and they're both, my youngest twin, we settled into her college on Monday. And then the oldest twin, we're settling in to her new college next week. And so I had this kind of moment that I was talking to colleagues in our schoolhouse here about that, and I got a little emotional and choked up, but the beauty of that moment was my colleagues, the folks that I get, different teachers, and they said, you're not alone, and that was a powerful moment for me to realize, no, I'm not alone. I still have a band, and that's just the gig, but yes. It is tough saying goodbye. I know that your own children are a little bit younger than mine. So when that day comes, let me know. And if you need a shoulder to cry on, I'm here.
I'm like terrified. I have a 7 and a 10-year-old. I want to press pause so badly. I really want to stay here for quite a while. This is a rest stop. Let's just hang out here for a little while before we get back on that road, because I'm really loving this age group that I have right now. The 7 and 10 is pretty lovely. So,
and I'll say this to you guys, real quick aside, but related to the empty nest thing. We have an older daughter, who just graduated from college. So let's go back 4 years ago. I hadn't gotten her a graduation gift. So, and I know. My oldest daughter loves to read, so I went to our local Barnes and Noble. Now, this was the night before her high school graduation. Okay, so I figured, I'll get her the obligatory Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go, because that's what dads and moms do, or grandparents do when they give that book. I'm going to tell you this. I get to the children's section of Barnes and Noble, and all of a sudden it had hit me. Because I started seeing the books, and I know that you both, bond with. Go ahead, Lainey. Yeah, I started seeing the books that we had read to them.
I'm gonna
get. Lainey's gonna lose it. Like, you're gonna make her cry.
Yeah. No, it gets better. So I'm walking around like, oh my God, there's Ferdinand. Oh, wait, there's Goodnight Gorilla. That was the book, Deb, my wife and I, that was the very first book that when Deb was pregnant with Maddie, we rushed to the bookstore and we go, this is her first book. There's the Lorax, all these books that Maddie, so I start losing it, like crying to the point, y'all, where the person in that worked in the children's section came over to, are you all right, sir? And I like she was going to call security, because I just lost it. I said, I have a daughter, and I got the book, and I'm crying, and I called my wife, and crying and just weeping. So my advice to you is that when Amazon is a wonderful thing, so that don't go to the bookstore the night before graduation, and because but Bree, to your point too, the whole parent point, like, we prepare them for that, and you gotta let them go. You gotta let them fly. And And so the same thing with the leaders, they're ready, and we still check in on each other, and I'm still like, kind of like a dad, hey, Rick, did you read this memo? Or make sure you've got this, and the same thing for my daughters, but yeah, when that day comes, also when you drop them off to college, don't turn back.
Oh, I'm having these flash forwards that are giving me anxiety. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
No, I don't mean it like that. It's just like I really get emotional. Like a couple things. Like first of all, Sean, you and I have probably talked almost every day over this summer vacation, summertime at least. I don't know how much vacation there's been, but summertime and much vacation. But and so I've seen, just like Bree has, we've seen the posts and we know what's happening, and I didn't really make that connection that you've got the 2 empty nests. So like I just want you to feel the virtual hug I'm sending you. Every day I'm thinking of you and you just the way you lift other people up. I'm going to take it to the kids. That's going to get me too emotional. So I'm going to focus on the admins that have empty nested. You are really, really good at building up people and kind of building capacity and building these leaders. And I just would love to hear kind of some of the things, we did Campfire Combos EDU over the summer. All 3 of us did, which was a really great professional learning experience. And one of the things that I want to share with listeners, because, the 3 of us were involved in it, is that Sean's, one of his greatest intentions with this, it was a Voxer chat. We did a different topic every week, and it was meant to be super casual. Come to the fire when you want to chat, leave when you need a break, do whatever you need to. But one of Sean's intentions as we were talking about this project is, how do we bring in the person that doesn't feel connected? Like, how do we bring in someone who maybe doesn't have that community at their campus? And so I feel like you are so intentional with building, like I said, building that capacity, but also just bringing people in and being super inclusive and making sure everyone feels welcome at the campfire. So I just would love to hear a little bit more about how that's going and how that's, been happening and how it's going to be happening moving forward, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. So it's very important to me, not just as an educator, but as a human being, that everyone feels welcome. Everyone feels invited. Everyone feels included. There is no B team, C list. There is no second string. As my dad has taught me and still does, everybody's off the bench.
Oh.
We're all stars. We all have gifts and talents and strengths to contribute, and no matter how large or small. And that was a big thread in my life, as my own personal life, and then that was a big thread as a teacher. By trade, even though I'm a practicing principal, my trade is I'm a high school English teacher. And so it was really important. Yeah. So is really important that the classroom, the culture that I built, that everyone was invited. I was known kind of, I would ask for the quote unquote lower level classes, and I treated that class like it was, Uber AP English. I did. And like, no, we're not going to read the comic book. We're going to, of course, I differentiated instruction, but no, we're going to read Shakespeare. We're going to read that. Why would we not? So, and that was also important to me as a leader. I think our best way as leaders, obviously, I hope it's obvious, is to serve and support. Mm-hmm. And my hook is to give praise and thanks. And to tap into that gift that we all have. My parents did that for me. Specifically, my 5th grade teacher did that to me, and that had a tremendous life-changing impact on me. So I really try to espouse that and live that. There's just so many opportunities that are missed because folks feel like they don't belong, or they're not included, or they're not valued. And I've been on the receiving end of that. I was last to get picked in kickball. I was excluded from things because of my race. I was excluded from things because I am a geek. and still am, so I hate that feeling of exclusion. I hate that feeling of not feeling belonged or valued. So I really try to just do my little part to get that out for others. And I think that's so important now. When you mentioned campfire combos, and when we, and when we started talking about how we were going to collaborate on that, we kept going back to that lonely teacher that might not know what Twitter is, that might not know, about the Evolving Learner book, that may not know about Lemonade Learning and what you and what Bree and Lainey are doing so beautifully, but we want them to feel connected, and to feel like that they're a part of something. You don't necessarily have had to have written a book or have a large Twitter following, what have you. You have a voice, you have gifts, and the other part of that too is, as teachers, regardless of title, regardless of what have you, we, to me, and I'm biased because I've been doing this 29 years, but this is the noblest of all professions. And because we get to make a singular, sustainable, lasting impact on a child. We get to be that person that gets to ignite change and to serve and support someone who's going to grow up to change the world. And Lainey, you've heard me say this before. I believe that in the schoolhouse that I'm in, that I believe there is going to be the next Steve Jobs or Oprah Winfrey or Sojourner Truth or whomever, whatever icon world changer. And if they're not that person, then maybe, just maybe, they'll be the parent of that world changer. Maybe they'll be the teacher of that world changer. Maybe they'll be the great grandparent of the person that's going to figure out a way that is going to get rid of any kind of pandemic. And so I think it's, and so all the more reason why, if you have an opportunity to be with someone and to encounter with somebody as we are now, find that gift, call it out into the universe, and then maybe then you'll do the same for someone else. You just never know. And for me, it was that teacher and my parents as well that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and inspired me, and they still inspire me and still motivate me. So I don't know if that made any sense.
It was so beautiful. I was taking it all in. I was like, oh my goodness. I'm by the way, for those of you who are not watching, I'm like taking copious notes too. I know that we're actually capturing this, but I still like notes. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
My brain is like all over the place right now with all of the things that you just said. Just the last part of seeing something that's in you that you don't see in yourself. That's one of my most favorite quotes that I like to share with instructional leaders. Tom Landry, one of his quotes as a coach is the person who sees in you what you are not able to see in yourself and pushes you to something that you are not able to believe that you can do yourself. And I think, that's paraphrasing him, but I think that is one of those pieces that is so very important. And if you look at it from an athletic standpoint, if you look at it from a musical standpoint, from an educational standpoint, from all of those different pieces, every single person has someone in their life who saw the genius in them that they weren't able to see themselves. And somehow they broke through that shell and put you in a situation to where you got to understand and appreciate that gift that you have that you didn't know, right? Like, and I'll never forget being a for real grown up, right? And one of the first times that I was presenting at a state level, and it was here in Texas, and I had finished the session, and I was picking things up and getting ready to pack my stuff up. And all of a sudden I heard this voice, and she's going to kill me for saying this, but I still very clearly remember this. And it was my middle school basketball coach. Oh, and nice. All I heard was like, Bree. And like immediately my heart started racing, and I like turned around and I was like ready to get on the line. Like I was like, oh my gosh, Coach Linglaw's here. Like this is, and so, and it was just that, like, it totally made my heart so very happy, first off, to 15 years after the fact, like here she is, and she's in a new role, and was out of athletics and now into into an instructional leadership role. And at the same time, like I remember how awful I thought she was at times, right? Because she would like push us to no end, and we were just like, we're going to die, right? We really just didn't think it was physically possible to do the things that she had us do. But she knew that we had it in us. And now all these years later, I'm able to be so very grateful for that, because she didn't let us settle. She had us really, really lean into that work and build forward with it. And I love that you said that, because that is a piece that that I think when we remember who those people are in our lives, and like I said, it doesn't have to be academic, it doesn't have to be athletic, it can be, right, from a religious influence, it can be from family influence, whatever that case is. When you have that person that pushes you to that level and lets you go beyond your comfort, right? And that's when you get to see that really shine. I appreciate that so much, with that notion of coming into circumstances, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's as a principal, whether it's as an instructional leader, you're going to have a team around you that is going to have different offerings, and they're not always going to be the same. And we need that, right? We need that variety. We need to be able to hear the bass line, just like we have the strings that are coming in, right? Like I think that that's one of those moments of, we know that there are so many layers to the music. If each can stand on its own, but the richness comes when you add it all in together. And so I love that you have reminded people that if you're a bass player, like we can't work without the bass. Like we've got to have you come in and you have a place, and you have something to give into that way.
It was only a matter of time till we got the musical analogies in here. So I appreciate that, Bree. And I have my two storyteller friends, so we have that going too. So
English teachers, I mean, this is what we do, but you nailed some great moments there, some great thoughts, and especially with the music piece. I mean, bass line. I mean, my day's made that. Now that's a day maker right there. That's a day maker. I dig that. But no, I greatly appreciate it. How lucky your kids were. How lucky that your classes were to have you in front of them. And it was funny. One of the things that you said, Bree, kind of reminded me. It's a great reminder, and I think for anyone who's listening, those who are listening, that we talk about learning loss, right? And we and COVID, and but no, the beat goes on, right? And you're going to do what you've always done. You're going to provide that same level of greatness and excellence as you always have. It may be a little different. Now, and also too, are you getting? I mean, I know you're in Texas. You getting season tickets out of this? I mean, you drive Tom Landry's name, so he's iconic. I don't know. I mean,
if they want to sponsor, that's all fair and well. But it. And I won't belabor this point in Lainey's interest, because she does. I'm probably going to get fined for talking about sports, but one of the things that I was working with a school district in New Jersey, and their superintendent at the time, he and I were talking about how he had gone to college on a wrestling scholarship, and when he graduated, he takes his first teaching gig, and it is to be a basketball coach. He's never played basketball in his entire life. He's like, but okay, you know what? Hey,
Ted Lasso.
Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth. Exactly. Hey, that's a sports reference, Laney. There you go.
That's all I got. Ted Lasso. You've now seen the full catalog. That's up.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
So he starts coaching basketball, and he has inherited a phenomenal team. Like literally all the dude has to do is show up, and like they've got it all down pat. They win the conference. Like it's amazing, right? And he is sitting there at 23 years old of like, I am an amazing coach. Like obviously, like this is what all has happened, right? And so he has his confidence just like through the roof, right? Like everything that has happened, all this works. And the next year, all of those guys graduate, and he gets a whole new crew, and he finds out very quickly he was out of his depth when it came to that. But when he was sharing this story with me, we were talking about how, what often happens in our classroom or on our court or in our schoolhouse is that we have plans. We have things that we think we're going to do, and we have those best practices that we've already like leaned into, and we know they work. And then all of a sudden you get a new set of people and it doesn't work anymore, right? And so I've been saying this phrase with principals across the country this last few weeks, which is, we have the kids that we have, and it doesn't matter. Like, I despise the phrase learning loss. I don't think that it is. I mean, we could spout research, we could go through all of that, but regardless, you have the kids that you have. And as educators, the noblest of occupations, as you said, as educators, we work with what's in front of us, and we rise to that occasion, and we lean into those moments to make sure that they're where they're at. How do you, as a principal, help your staff right now, help your faculty feel prepared? Because we know that that's a big scary thing right now. Like, how do I do this? This is something that I don't feel comfortable with. How do you help them feel prepared, but at the same time acknowledge that we might need to slow down a little bit, because we can't shove, we can't drink from a fire hose all of the time, but we also can't like pretend it's not happening and just go la 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 la, I'm too stressed, I can't do this, right? So like, how do you, again, putting on your parent hat of like doing some tough love at times, how are you creating that environment or attempting to create that environment with your faculty?
Well, it's important. I say this a lot when something bad happens. Somebody pulls a fire alarm, or somebody falls and breaks their arm, and those are those things that happen. And people will say to me, "Man, you must feel bad about the pulled fire alarm." And I go, "No." And then the question is, well, why? At least we responded. At least we responded to the fire alarm, or at least we responded to the fact that a certain group of students is not doing their best in whatever way. If we didn't respond, we would be that would be a problem. If you didn't respond to that child that was sitting in your classroom for whatever reason, if you didn't respond to putting up the bulletin board, and there are so many ways in which teachers and educators, they are responding. That's why I have a huge problem with learning loss, because that term, denotes that we didn't do anything.
Right.
We didn't do anything. And I'm obsessed with language and words and all those things. So what I really try to, again, espouse to the teachers I get to serve is, at least you responded. At least you're doing this. How great, how cool is that? Or, hey, can you, that thing, hey, can I share that with somebody? So I'm constantly trying to network those gifts out, and by pulling people in and recognizing what they're doing. So we, for example, we're doing a thing in our school with Ignite Your Shine, for the work of Lavana Roth, and redesigning and our school culture. And I said, guys, I can't do this by myself. So anybody who wants to be on the design team can be on it. And let's build the solutions and build the answers and build the responses together. And I thought I'd get maybe 2 or 3 folks. And this was back in the spring. I ended up with 17 folks that have volunteered to be on this team of all different grade levels, of all different levels and the departments and what have you. So I try to be very transparent. I try to be very self-effacing. I do talk of myself as a geek, and I do try to show my humanity in a way like, hey, I'm a working parent too, and I'm in the doghouse because I didn't bring the recycling bin down and help a brother out. So I really, again, I just think it's important to be vulnerable and human, but also in tune. As leaders, you really got to be in tune with yourself too, but you also have to be in tune with those gifts and just say, hey, we're responding, So and the room doesn't have to be perfect. The bulletin board doesn't have to be perfect. You put something up, you know, hey, you're teaching this for the first time. Didn't the lesson didn't go well? Well, at least you tried. And again, that's a very parent thing too. You guys get that as parents, man. You did your best. It may not have been first place, but man, you sure did. You came in fifth place, and there were 15 behind you. Hey, I'll take top five. You know, so any kind of growth that I can again maximize and monopolize, that's so important. And you have to be vocal and relentless about it. And then also be real about it, and there's this notion of toxic positivity, and Delaney, you're not smiling, what's wrong with you? Yeah, there is a pandemic going on. I lost a family member from it, that last fall. There are things that are, and people are scared, and people are terrified, and going through all levels of panic and anxiety, and so it's important to recognize that and respond to that as best as you can with an empathetic heart. It's so important.
It really is, and I'm so sorry for you and anyone who's experienced loss. There's just nothing to ease that. I'm so sorry for that. I want to just acknowledge that one of the things that I have really appreciated as I'm getting to know you even better every day, Sean, is how intentional, how thoughtful you are with finding, I won't use the B word, balance, because that's not Bree's word, but how intentional you are at trying to find harmony. I'll use harmony if that's okay. Between music, right? Between well-being and professional growth, right? And so that's something that I really admire, that you've got your long view, you've got your eye on the ball. This is where we want to go, but also being super mindful of just, we need to take care of ourselves and that well-being. And so I think that, and not to be toxic positivity, but I do hope that on, the benefits of what we've had to go through on the positive side of that, because there's been a tragedy and plenty of sadness. I get that. But hopefully we can all move forward being much more intentional with that's harmony of those two, well-being and growing professionally.
Right on. That's one of the things that you and I vibed on initially, when we started talking about how to collaborate. One of the things, I think the first topics we talked about was looking back at the past year. Yes, there were things that absolutely sucked about this past school year. No, make no mistake, there are things that were absolutely horrible and stressful and painful for all of us. And we have to acknowledge that. The hat trick, right? The Tony Dorsett, getting it, a little Cowboys reference here. Hopefully, I'm working on these season tickets for you, man.
You're gonna be my go-to. Like I'll call you. You'll come in. We'll enjoy a suite. It'll be fantastic.
You got it, man. You got it. Jerry, are you listening? Please, sorry, Jerry. Sorry, Dallas. Okay, but anyway, but the notion that there are things that went well. Mm-hmm. There were things that worked, and we that was kind of part of our initial vibe with Campfire Combos is, well, let's bring that out into the universe, and let's, however small, however large, however, it may not have been something that trended on Twitter, but if it's something that brought joy to another child, or brought joy to a parent, or joy to you as an educator, like, oh my God, I figured out Canvas. What the heck was Canvas all about? All this stuff about Canvas, this, Canvas, that, or what's this Flipgrid stuff, and then all of a sudden, if you attempted that and made that part of your practice, or if you decided, what, this whole SEL thing, I got to hit standards and I got to do some things, but I got to start infusing some of that into our practice. Maybe this is the opportunity to do that. So I think that's really important that's not important, it's essential going into this school year, that we acknowledge, what was, and we acknowledge the reality of the pain and the stress and the turmoil. But also too, our educators, our teachers and leaders, everyone who was involved in Schoolhouse did just some amazing work that was life-changing and world-changing. And so I don't want us to lose that, I don't want us to lose that momentum, and to lose that there were things that teachers did way beyond the call of duty that worked. And so if we can build upon that, and well, these things worked. And I mean, that's something that, I hope to bring into the schoolhouse coming into, back to school and beyond. What were the things that worked, and let's build upon that. And then what were the things that didn't work? And, maybe we can make them better. Or we'll just stop doing them,
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me personally, I fully acknowledge and accept that toxic positivity is out there, but I think there's a very different thing when you're just making an intentional shift from deficit-based thinking to asset-based thinking. And so I think to me, that's what it's about. It's like, I think learning loss is so triggering because it's so deficit based. And well, really, it should be more about what did we, as you just said, Sean, well, what can we learn from this? What are the things that we're going to take away from this? And to me, that is not toxic positivity. That is just a different mindset that is going to help us move forward rather than wallow in what was really tragic about what we've been through.
And you said a very key word, Lainey, triggers, and that's something that, that we talk about, in a emotional sense or mental health sense. But I also think too, we need to be aware of those triggers. I know I do as a principal. And, if I was in the classroom, I mean, we're very sensitive about, triggering certain behaviors or certain mindsets for our students. And we're very intentional about that, right? I mean, whether if it's an IEP or if we've built a relationship with that student, we know, oh, wow, that they don't like loud noise, or I have to be careful when we read this portion or what have you. But I also think that's essential, not just as leaders, that we're aware of the triggers for the teachers that we get to serve, but also amongst teachers. Sometimes for me, Twitter is a trigger. Because, I'll go, well, man, I suck as a principal. This guy's doing this or this person's doing that and got a selfie with 5,000 people. And I'm sitting here listening to Sinatra, in a dark corner someplace. But I think also going into this year that if we're cognizant of that and aware of that, and maybe you triggered, you ignited a thought rather. So, and that actually might be an interesting future podcast, or what are those triggers in education and how can we overcome them? That might be a future campfire combo. Just kind of hit me, because some folks have those triggers in the profession, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know we need to start to let you go because you're a 12-month employee and a busy man, and you have some, positions you need to fill, unfortunately. And I hope you find great candidates. But I do want to just quickly make sure that we address the beautiful work that you've put out into the world. So again, you are an author and a podcaster. So you have got The Pepper Effect, an amazing book. I had a chance to read it. I love how you take, and this is where you and Bree are just like so simpatico, because this is not me. I am not great with the analogies and the storytelling, but the way that you take the stories of the Beatles and bring out the elements of imagination and peace and coming together, and how you draw the parallels in education, to me is magical. Like, I think it's so lovely. And so I want to make sure that people know you do not need to be a Beatles fan, because I still can't give you a lot of answers. Sean and I were on a trivia the other day, and I was literally Googling every Beatles question, and I read his book and devoured it and soaked it all in. I remember the lessons. I still have trouble with the Beatles trivia, but you do not need to love the Beatles to read this book. You will get so much. You might leave loving the Beatles, which I did, but you don't have to love them to start. And then you've also got the podcast Principal Liner Notes. So,
right.
So Bree, any last thoughts before we let Sean go on his way? And then Sean, I'll give you a chance. We'll give you a chance if you have any parting wisdom that you want to share with us.
Sure.
I think the big thing that I just want to express such gratitude to you, Sean, is helping us remember, especially at this time at this age, like at this stage, August, right? Like it's so funny. Carl Hooker and I shared an office for a while, and we always talked about there was August Carl, which was like dun dun dun. Like it's such a stressful time. Like when you have like August, regardless of your role, like if you're in education, August Bree's hardcore. Like August Sean is hardcore. Like it's a lot to process. And so I think I want to say, I want to say thank you for helping us think about why we need to be so very mindful of the humanity that is in our world, right? Like the humanity of our students, the humanity of our stakeholders, the humanity of the families, the humanity of the experiences that we're all going through on some level, right? Like, whether it's the challenge within, one of the challenges within the pandemic was that universal constraint of the pandemic. Like suddenly we all found ourselves trying to navigate this really nebulous, scary monster that was changing at so many different levels. And some of us were able to skitter away from the monster relatively unscathed, and some not so much. And, but that said, how we handled it, it was all based off of humanity and really, coming in and acknowledging that this is really a circumstance that that needs to be mindfully appreciated, that it's difficult. And that said, you also can't hide underneath your bed and never come out either. And so I think, it is that reminder that, we had Dennis Matthews on the podcast, and one of the things that we talked about on his episode was lemonade cannot be made without sweetness or without sour. You have to have both of them in order for it to really come in. And that's kind of like that chemical cooking kind of norm, right? Like if you want something to be sweeter, you have to have some sour that's added into it in order for that to be enhanced. And so while, I think, with that reminder of toxic positivity, the reason why it's toxic is not because of the positivity. It's because it is saccharinely sweet to a point to where it makes absolutely no difference. All you've done is just ruin something, right? Like you've made it too sweet to a point to where it cannot be consumed. It cannot be appreciated at all. It's very much reminds me of being in the classroom when we were having conversations over praise versus feedback, right? Like praise is just being like, you're awesome, dude. Okay, What did I do right? I don't know, but you rock. Yeah. Okay, that doesn't help me, right? And so same thing with toxic positivity. Like if you can be very specific and say like, okay, I really acknowledge that there are some difficulties that are happening. I'm so very sorry, Sean, of the trials that your family has gone through in here. How can I help with that, right? Like that's very different than just being like, suck it up, buttercup. We all got to do this, right? And so, so I think again, like very long-winded response to just say, thank you so much for reminding us that humanity is our job, and that humanity is our privilege, and that it's also our responsibility. And I just am so appreciative that this is the conversation that we've had today. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm gobsmacked right now. One thing too, in August, principals and all of us too. I mean, we get emotional. And, like I've got my empty nest thing going on, and it's, the beat goes on, but I'm very, very grateful. And Lainey, please don't sell your analogy and storytelling short. So somebody I know wrote a pretty great chapter in a certain book that I also have, because I always carry you with me, Lainey. And you wrote about, because of a teacher, Lainey wrote a very amazing and powerful chapter about a leader, that had a major impact, and as I reflect upon our moments together, all three of us here, I just think about how cool is it, Bree, that you have this love and passion for horses. And you before we talked, somebody saw something in you, a certain dad, and how you have shared that passion relentlessly, and how great it is that you're making that impact there. And I gotta like make you like a horseback riding mixtape or something, you know.
Yes.
We should have been recording for that part of the conversation, because that was
Yes.
y'all still, Bree's life is really epic. Like there is a lot going on. I don't know how she does everything she
We
does.
got a road trip to Texas, man. But
I know.
but then Laney, I'm also grateful for how you so artfully, you know, and in the story of Monique, who you write about, and I know we're going way over, don't edit any of this, but how she saw something in you in such a very powerful yet simple way for both, you know, in both of your journeys, you had that, you know, and then, you know, how that empowered you and inspired you. So I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for being here and reaching out. I'm grateful for the courage that you guys have inspired in me. And I hope that those that are listening don't wait. You know, if you see that kindred spirit like you guys did with Lemonade Learning, and you know, who would have thought a year ago or however old the podcast is, you know, that you would create this just wonderful gem, and how you're inspiring so many, you know. And then Laney, you know, you reached out to me. I'm this little wallflower geeky guy with my Beatles albums and my big glasses and bald head, and you know, you reached out and said, hey, we should do something. Let's collaborate. So for all those that are listening, kind of my final thing is don't wait. You've got gifts. If you've got I mean, who would think to put Lemonade and Learning together? Who would think to put the Beatles and school culture together? Who would think to put campfire and conversations and education and well-being together? You know, no idea is too crazy. In fact, we need a few more crazy ideas in the world, right? We need a few more crazy ideas in education. So if you're sitting on the wallflower there, or you're looking across your PLN, or you're looking across down the hall from your schoolhouse, and you think, you know what, there's some cool things there that are happening in that room, or that leader, or that I'm hearing about this evolving learner book, reach out. Don't reach out to any three of us. You know, we won't turn anybody away. We're always down to collaborate and to support. So I would say that going into the school year, if you can find your band, or find a gig, or find somebody that can be that baseline for you, or be that percussionist for you, or be that flautist for you, do it. You never know. I mean, if we're all making sounds together, we're going to have that harmony, as you referenced, Laney, and it's going to be great for kids and great for schools, but ultimately great for the world. We need more of that.
Oh, I want to echo Bree's gratitude. I'm just so grateful for you. And there's so many things like I want to respond to. First of all, I think of that gift that's out there from, you know, when you keep referring to yourself as a geek, I don't think you know what that word means. Like that's every time you say that, I'm like, I don't see that, except in the most cool, awesome, like special way possible. That's all. And then I don't know how it is that we have you on the podcast, and I think you're promoting our stuff more than we are promoting yours. So checks in the mail. But I do really hope that, and I want to make sure and give you a chance to let people know how to connect with you after this. So have your socials locked and loaded, have those handles ready. I just want to throw one more reminder out: the Pepper Effect. Read this book. And then take that even further, listening to Principal liner notes, because they are the perfect combination. And I want to give, and just, I never get to say it enough, Bree named Lemonade Learning. And when she gave me that name, and it was like this most beautiful concept, I was like, well, we have to do this. So I just wanted to I never get to give her enough credit for that. So thank you for Bree and your brilliance. And Sean, thank you for your brilliance. And so super grateful. Sean, give us the handles, the best way to reach you. Where do you like to connect with people?
Well, I would say probably the two. There's all the traditional ways. So Twitter, you can follow me at SM Gaillard, SMGAILLARD. Same thing on Instagram. I don't mind a direct message, or hey, you know, what's your favorite Beatles song, or also, Laney, I would say this too. I gotta brush up on my Blake Shelton. You know, I gotta brush up on my Garth Brooks. So I'm I'm working on that,
Well, Bree and I can help you with the country. I think we're both pretty in that.
I took the history of rock and roll at the University of Texas, man. I can go way back. Like we can talk. We can talk.
We must. And a lot of folks think because I'm a Beatles guy that I don't dig country. Well, the Beatles were very much influenced by, they covered a Buck Owens song, Act Naturally. Carl Perkins, who played with Johnny Cash. They love Carl Perkins. So I'm a big Johnny Cash guy. I'm a big Glenn Campbell guy. And then at some point we need to talk about Bobby Gentry. I wrote an article about the ode to Billy Joe and her one of her albums. But anyway, Twitter, SM Gaillard, Instagram, SM Gaillard, Sean Gaillard, Facebook, hashtag the Pepper Effect, hashtag Celebrate Monday, and then whatever record store, wherever Laney is, I'll be there, wherever Bree's there, and I'll be there, and hopefully we'll all be able to connect. Bree, I know we met very briefly a couple of years ago at ISTE, and I was totally, geeking out. Yeah, that was kind of cool. Small world.
So fun. Yes. So, and now we're kind of getting back into being around people again. And so I'm super excited for those paths to reconnect and cross again. So
it's going to happen. Elaine, we'll
lemonade on me when next time we all get together. Like I got the first round of some really fantastic, refreshing lemonade. So
does it start with Mike's?
Yeah, exactly. It can. Oh, well, Sean, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of our listeners. As always, Bree, thank you for being the best podcast co-host. I so appreciate you. Sean, obviously appreciate you, and can't wait for all of us to connect again. I think we could have gone, when you said Celebrate Monday, I'm like, oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about that. I think we could have probably made this a 2-hour podcast. We'll have to figure out another way to get all your greatness out there, but people connect with Sean. He's amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
If you enjoyed this batch of Lemonade Learning, please check out our website, lemonadelearning.us, for more resources. Be sure to subscribe today so you don't miss out on future lessons, laughter, or lemonade.
And if you're feeling really generous, please go to Apple Podcasts to submit a review so other educators know the value. One last thing, learning and lemonade are best together. So please connect with us on social media using the hashtag #LemonadeLearning to share your story. Plus, we're always looking to give away stickers and swag.